Well, welcome again, and I trust you're working your way well through this. I'm wearing my nice bright shirt to just liven you up and make sure that you stay tuned in and don't become a bit overwhelmed with all the input that's coming. Now, I'm hoping these videos are helpful to you. A couple of things I want to talk to you about just for a moment are, and remind you, is the importance of being able to assess the weight of your load. You need to know how heavy your weight is with a degree of accuracy, and you will be assessed on this. There are going to be some calculation questions in your exam, and so just be aware of that when you're assessed. There will be a few basic calculation questions. We'll provide you with a calculator, and you need to work through them and do it well. And in your activity book, you're going to have some practice calculations to do, so I want to encourage you to work through that. Another thing you need to be looking out for with regard to your load is, of course, the safety of your forklift, that it's in good condition and able to be used and is of the right capacity. And we've only just had a look at looking through a pre-start check and what that all entails. Another thing you need to always be conscious of is your path of movement. You're constantly watching and checking your path of movement to remove all hazards, or at least reduce the likelihood of risk. And so you need to have eyes to identify hazards and eliminate them, substitute, isolate, whatever it takes to cause that risk to be reduced. You need to be aware of that all the time while you're driving, and especially before you start the task. Check your path of movement and make sure that it is safe for operations. Now, there are occasions when you're going to be driving with a bulky load and you will need to travel in reverse as you cannot see accurately where you're going. Or you could use a spotter to direct you, but you will do a lot of reverse driving. And while you're driving in reverse, you're going to be constantly looking over your shoulder to make sure that everything is going well. But keep looking back, monitoring your load. Because if your load becomes unstable, or if people suddenly are around you, you need to be watching what's happening to your load. The risk of it collapsing, falling, misplacing, something going wrong is increased because you're not watching it. And so you need to constantly remember to monitor your load. And finally, be aware that unplanned things can happen. So keep sharp. Be aware. People could walk in. Vehicles could come. Something could fall. Be conscious of the unplanned happening at any moment. Okay, I want to take a minute to work through a couple of those points we just talked about. One of them is determining your maximum safe working load, or your working load limit. And this you know by the capacity of your forklift. So you need to check the data plate and identify, number one, the maximum it can lift with a vertical mast, and then the derated capacity with a forward tilt mast, because that changes how much you can lift, and also what the load center distance is, and this is also identified on your data plate. Of course, as you increase the load center distance, and remember the load center distance is the distance measured from the face of the forks to the center of gravity of your load. And so if you've got a load, let's say a pallet that's 1400 long, your load center distance is going to be around 700. Depending on where the center of gravity is, but around 700, which means that on a typical forklift with a 600 load center distance, you would have to decrease the capacity as you have increased your load center distance. And this is very important because it changes what your working load limit is. And so as you increase the load center distance, or as you tilt the mast forward, which also in effect increases the load center distance, what you are doing is you need to decrease or derate your forklift to a lower weight level. You can't lift as much with your load center distance more than the rated distance, which is identified on your data plate. So make sure you take note of that. It's very important. Before you go to your next activity, I want to just talk to you about the need to, on occasions, restack your load. And I want to say this again because it's important. Sometimes your pallet becomes unstable, items begin to fall off, or you can just see that it's not a stable load and you need to restack. There are three important rules to remember whenever you need to restack a load, or even pallet racking if it needs to be restacked because it's become unstable. These are the rules. Firm, level surface. You need to stack it on a firm, level surface, not stacking it on a crooked surface and then you need to lift with the whole thing sloping. Firm, level surface. Heaviest items at the bottom. Obviously, don't put the heavy items on top, the light items on the bottom. Heaviest boxes, cartons, whatever they are, on the bottom. And don't stack too high that your load becomes unstable. These three things are important. firm level surface. Don't stack it too high that your load becomes unstable, and keep your heaviest items on the bottom. And this will continue to hold the load as stable as it can be. And of course, wrap it firmly with pallet wrapping and travel safely.